All right, today I'm going to be brewing my pumpkin ale, which is the same exact recipe as I've been using, since last year. And this time I'm going to only make a couple modifications, not so much in the recipe, but mostly on the procedure. The recipe itself, I think all my friends really like the beer. I really like the beer, and so I'm just going to be making minor tweaks to see if I can get mostly the texture to change a little bit on the beer. So let me start off by covering the recipe for those of you who are new to this. All the grains that I have in here is basically 9 pounds of American 2-row. I have 1.25 pounds of Munich Malt, 10 Lovibond, and then I have 1/2 pound of wheat, and then I have 1/4 pound of Crystal 40. Now, same thing, I used 2 pumpkins, the sweet pie pumpkin style. And to save a little bit of time this morning, I ended up baking the pumpkin last night. So I just, took all the pulp out, and that turned out to be roughly about 4 pounds of pulp. These pumpkins, I think they're a little bit better than what I used last year. They seem to have a lot more pulp, and they also were a lot sweeter. So they were organic pumpkins, if that means anything. But I think the pumpkin itself is going to make a big difference. I'm going to be mashing the pumpkin with the rest of the grains. Same thing with the spices. I'm keeping the same spices: ground cinnamon, pumpkin pie spice, ground nutmeg, and ground allspice. For water treatment, I've got same thing: 1 gram of gypsum salt and 2 grams of calcium chloride. The other change that I'm doing is I'm going to be using Czech Saaz hops, which are a little bit more on the spicy side, and I think that will go a little bit better as opposed to the hops that I used to use the year before. And for yeast, same thing: California ale yeast. Now, as far as the process goes, what I'm going to be changing is I'm going to basically skip the protein rest altogether, and then I'm going to be mashing at the same temperature. And basically what I'm looking to do with that is I'm hoping to not cut down as much protein by skipping that protein rest, and maybe giving the beer a little bit of a creamier texture to it. The dryness should be pretty much the same. It's not exactly a very, very dry beer, but it's dry enough to where it's a drinkable beer. So I'm thinking that by removing the protein rest, I can get a little bit of a creamier texture to kind of resemble a little bit more of a, kind of like a pumpkin pie texture resemblance. That's basically what I'm trying to do with this. So I don't know what it's going to do exactly, but let's hope that that's what it does. So other than that, everything else is the same. That's really the only change I'm doing for texture-wise, and for flavor-wise, it's just the hops. So heating up water, I'm going to be striking at 170 degrees temperature. I'm going to be using 4 gallons to strike. All right, so let's get started. So I start out by adding all the grains into my mash tun. And as usual, I like to do my salt additions right at this time, so I can kind of mix it in with all the grains. I seem to be getting good results with that. Then I went ahead and added all of the pumpkin pulp. This turned out to be roughly about 4 pounds of pulp, so I just used 2 pumpkin pies. And I think I got a lot more pulp this time than I did last year with regular pumpkins. This time I used organic sweet pumpkin pie, so I think I got a little bit more pulp, and they also were sweeter and tasted a lot better. Now, when I was getting ready to add my strike water, I realized that I made the calculations not accounting for the pumpkin being in the fridge overnight, which basically made it cooler than I was expecting. So I ended up raising my strike water temperature to about 180 degrees, and it was something that I just came up with on the spot. It was quite a wild guess. I don't even know why or how I even came up with that number. I just decided that that would be roughly a good number to good temperature to go up to strike. And I was shooting for 156 degrees mash-in temperature, but I ended up coming in at 154. So I guess that was a pretty good guess. This beer may come out a little bit drier than last year, but I think overall it's not going to be much of a difference to worry about. So anyways, I went ahead and mashed for about an hour, and then I just decided to lauter and sparge. Obviously recirculated a couple of times and until I started getting clear wort. And I've been actually trying out, I don't know if you notice, I've been trying different setups on my system. I've been trying also different ways to go about the brewing process. And this time I usually fly sparge. This time I decided to try out a batch sparge, and so just kind of getting an idea of what works best and what not, so I can, whenever I decide to upgrade equipment, I know what I'm going to be looking for. So anyways, I went ahead and collected about just under 7 gallons, so I think it was like 6 gallons and 3 quarters of wort, and then I brought that to a boil. I'm going to boil this for about 90 minutes. Now the hops that I got have lower alpha acid content, so I went ahead and added the hops at the beginning of the boil to make up for that number. And once I added the hops, you just go ahead and stir it a little bit, and it's really not a whole lot to do for 90 minutes other than just sit and wait, make sure you don't get any boilovers. And about 5 minutes beforehand, I went ahead and added all my spices and just gave the wort a really good stir, and basically started sending it into a whirlpool as I got ready to cool the wort. So at the point I went ahead and started cooling down my wort, and again I'm starting to pay a lot more attention to the temperature at which I pitch my yeast. So I made sure that the wort was cooled down to fermentation temperature, which is about 68 degrees is what I'm going to be doing. And I went ahead and just pitched the yeast right out of the vial without making a yeast starter this time. I didn't really have time to make a yeast starter, but I'm also trying to do some experimentations with yeast pitching rates, so it's another reason why I didn't do a yeast starter. I normally do yeast starters, and I usually recommend people do use yeast starters. So anyways, just want to let you know, in case you see me not doing a yeast starter, that's one of the reasons why. So anyways, I'm gonna be fermenting this, leaving the beer in the primary for 3 weeks, at which point I'm going to keg, and I will come back and give you an update then. I'll talk to you guys next video.